So we're back for another photo book critique, and this time it will be Matsumura Sayuri's, as you can see by the title. And this time it was actually shot in Hawaii, so here I am dressed as an average, Hawaiian tourist. So we will be able to see how exactly this photo book is. Alright, so here's the photo book, and as we can see, it isn't that huge. It's actually the same size as Nanami's photo book. It's like almost the same size. It is exactly the same size. So if you have seen my Nanami or you have Nanami's photo book, then you will see it's the same size. It's a little bit smaller than Wakatsuki's. If you look at Wakatsuki's, it's actually a bit taller, which for photos is actually better that it's a little bit taller. They might crop a lot in this photo book, seeing this already, so be prepared for that. And speaking of Wakatsuki Yumi, actually the photographer who took these pictures actually did Wakatsuki Yumi's photos, as well as some of the photos in here along with Takeo Deck. So those are the two photo books that I have that he's actually shot. So if you want to go and look at those reviews, they are on my channel for you to watch. And it might give you an idea of exactly how it's going to turn out. So let's see how Kuwajima Tomoki and Matsumura Sayuri actually collaborate together to make this photo book. So now I'm going to open it and look through it, analyze all the pictures, and be able to give you guys a critique of the photo book. So I took a look at it and I finally decided what I think of the photo book. But first, let's go over the front cover and the back cover of the photo book. So removing this doesn't really add anything to the actual cover. I feel like it looks a little bit better with the red, because you get the contrast of the red and the green. And taking that off, actually you see it's all bare white and it just says the name. I feel like it would have been a little bit better if how I teased about it in the weekly news video that I do when I first announced this. If it was actually landscape instead of portrait style like this, I think it would have caused for a little bit more interesting photo book. But keeping it like this in the actual photo book doesn't really cause too much distraction, thanks to what the photographer and I imagine Sayuri had a lot of say in what happens in the photo book, because there are some things in there that just scream Matsumura Sayuri, and we'll see that. So starting off with the front cover, we actually see here, it's her and her making this weird face. It's not the most appealing face. We'll see later on inside the actual photo book. There's an alternate take to this, which I think is way better and should have been the cover, because her eyes are a little bit like, I don't know, they give off a weird vibe. And I don't know what I think about her hands being like this. In the other photo, it's actually a little bit better what she does with her hands, and generally it's a little bit better. So I would have preferred that one to be the front cover instead. Maybe they were like, we don't know which one, flip-flop, Matsumura, you decide, and she decided on this one. And moving on to the back, we see the hand actually causing the shadow on the face, making the opposite effect of what I usually say that the light parts attract. Well, if everything's light, then the dark part will get a little bit more attention, even if you look at the white parts. This shadow bit will still cause your eye to draw a little bit towards that. Not as strong as something that's super light would, but just enough to get the attraction to the eyes. And really, this actually hurts a little bit, because in the eye we actually don't get a catch light, so she kind of looks a little dead inside. I mean, she has like a little sliver in her eye, but it isn't too much to like say, oh hey, this person looks lively and nice. And now looking at the inside cover, we get to see there's actually like a collage through like different Polaroids, it looks like. I'm not sure if they're actual Polaroids or if they're like images that just got put on an image of a Polaroid. But we see some of them are repeated, like these right here, but these other ones aren't that repeated. Although turning it over here, it is actually the same thing as the front. It's even like the same placement and everything, which I don't really like. If you would have kept this theme of it being repeated, then maybe have it repeated like 2 times, and then the other side they could be different photos that are repeated. Maybe that would have caused it to be a little bit different, because although this is better than everything just being white, it still is a little bit cheap having it like all the same front and back. I mean, if you're gonna pay for the ink, the front and back, then you might as well make it different. And even though it was shot in America, it still is the Japanese style opening books, which is interesting. So opening up, we get a little phrase, something about cute. Of course, it's Matsumura Sayuri, so what would we expect? But starting off on the first page with actual pictures, we get to see this right here, which is her leaning over from what looks to be a street light. And I already see a problem in this. It's right here where we actually see the fingers, and since it looks like it's a wide lens, it looks like the fingers are bigger than they have to be. That right away distracts me, and also these poles coming out of her head kind of distract me as well. But I do have to note that it is better to have these white borders rather than stretching it out all the way to where there's no border over here, but on the sides there would be borders. So again, with having your book this sort of format, it is a little bit harder for these photos to actually turn out good, because when you take the picture, it's a little longer than your usual photo that you usually get from like CVS. Like the most standard isn't what like DSLRs shoot. So you have to alternate to either cropping or doing stuff like this, or something more interesting as we'll see later on. But starting off the photo book, not horribly strong. Next we move on to this photo right here, which, can you guess what the thing that is wrong with this or could be improved, although it would be difficult? It is actually all of this blown out background, and if you watch my other videos you can guess why this happens. It is because she is in the shade, or partially in the shade, and this causes the shadow side to be darker, which means that if you expose for the shadow side, then everything else will be blown out like this. We've seen an example of this in Wakatsuki Yumi's. It's a really bad example of it, because like everything is blown out and you see like a little bit of hay in the background. So this isn't that big of a turn, but it still is kind of noticeable, which we see a lot in the photo, but actually with some overblownness in the background. Next is this photo right here, which I actually like because it's actually large and it puts her like at a good position with everything being symmetrical, like these lines over here, this horizon line, and her being straight on with the horizon line. I actually like the organization that I had. And plus it shows a little bit more about Hawaii, and I think this photo is like the one that shows Hawaii the best, other than like a few others. The rest don't really give that Hawaii vibe, other than like being on the beach. But then again, like we've seen other photo books in Japan that have more beach photos. But then when you think Hawaii, you don't want pure beach. You want like a little bit alternative, maybe in the markets or in other places. Now we start getting into the influences of what I think Matsumura had some input in saying, or the editors really kept it to her style. And it is this right here. As you can see, this is all like cut out images of her at I don't know where, but there's a lot of popcorn. Looking at this photo right here, you can actually see it's actually like a floaty, and plus she's not wearing shoes, so that kind of gives a big sign that's probably like at a pool somewhere. But it is interesting. I haven't seen this done in photo books before, where they actually like do a little bit more of art creating with them cutting it out and making it a little bit more playful and a little bit more fun with the background and with her being everywhere. And when I first looked at the photo book, I was like, oh, this is actually really smart to do to keep to her style. But some of them aren't that well executed as the others, because we'll see that some of them seem a little bit yearbookish. And what I mean by that is, it looks like something a student can make for a yearbook in the yearbook club. But this one is not one of them, so I appreciate this one. And here we have one where it's similar to the popcorn one, but they keep it in actual photos and they actually add waves. And this one seems a little bit yearbookish, but I think the fact that they actually made it like going towards one direction is something different, and it actually helps it still keep in the realm of a photo book. And especially for Matsumura Sayuri, I feel like this still stays to her style. Next up, we take an alternate take of the back cover, which is this one. And I really do like the back cover of the actual photo book, because that one you actually see all of the eye, you don't get some of the eye cut off. And also, it's a little bit more of looking towards the camera, kind of appealing the camera more, than this one being a little bit more subtle about it. I think working with the shadow, it's a little bit better to work a little bit more out there, because it's a little harder to get the attraction in the shadow. And if you do something like this, where you're kind of looking away and the eyes being covered, it kind of distracts a little bit and doesn't help you focus right there. And I'd say this one's blown out. If it was a little bit darker, then I would have liked it a little bit more. Like, you see like almost no texture like right here. So I would have liked it to be like maybe stopped down. It looks like it has to be stopped down like 3/4 of a stop. But yes, I do like what they did with the posing, keeping it all angular. It's a little bit different than the usual S curve, because right here there's no curve. Like maybe turning her hips a little bit more would have done it. But I have seen the style where it is actually straight on like that, with the legs crossed and the arms open. So this isn't a bad pose at all. Next I want to talk about these photos right here. These photos have like weird lighting in them. There's like a good number of photos of these in here, and the lighting is weird, or it's the chromatic aberrations. I don't know what it is, but something's off about it. There's like weird colors in here that I feel like shouldn't be in here. I mean, even looking at this one right here, you can see all the green right here, and over here, like all the blue. I don't know if this was done afterwards or something happened to the camera or the lighting in the actual room was actually horrible and all they could get is like room light, but then there's a weird wall casting weird color lights. Because if you don't know, the light that's coming in actually bounces off the wall. So if you have a green wall and like white walls around it, then the light reflects off of the green wall and the white walls. So in some spots get some color. So I think that might be going on here, but I can't confirm it because sometimes it looks too blue and sometimes it looks a little bit green. So I'm not too sure what was going on. But the reason I wanted to talk about this page was because of this photo right here. Now, as you remember, or if you haven't watched it, watch my Etomisa photobook critique, where I talk about Etomisa and the fact that a lot of the times where she tried to like show off her shoulder, like you can still see the imprint of the strap. And I think that wasn't intentional, although right here, it is clearly intentional. As we can see, the strap is right next to it, and with her, with this whole sequence of doing her toenails, we can see that's her going down and that she's been there for a little bit, so the strap has moved and we see the imprint of it, which I think actually helps because it actually shows intention in this photo and including it in here, kind of showing how long it takes for this process. As you can see, this is one of the photos where I think the color is a little bit weird because right here it's super blue, but the light coming outside of it isn't that blue as we see right here. I mean, it is a little blown out, but we would have seen it over here, the blue. So I think it might be post-production because in the highlights over here, we do see some blue as well. And in some spots, it's a little bit too red. I mean, clearly we've seen that Photoshop has been used, so maybe help keeping the skin tone around the same color. Maybe not making her look like she ate hot Cheetos would have been better. And as we've seen this photo previewed before, and as you can see, there's this big yellow spot right here, and there's a little bit yellow over here, and it's mostly blue around, especially coming from over here. So I don't think it's sun flare. I think it has to be post-production, right? Because for there to be weird, random yellow spots, it's probably the sun, and the blue coming in doesn't really match what's going on up here that isn't that blue comparatively to like hitting right here. We see a little bit of gradient of blue. And then moving on to this one, we see blue on this side over here, but then we see green over here. And it's a really weird connection to make with the blue, green, and then the skin tone. I feel like it doesn't really match that well. That's why these photos in here are my favorite. And if it was shot somewhere else, maybe not with so much post-production, I think this would have turned out super well. For example, this one, the green is in the shadows, the blue is in the highlights, and it doesn't really bother me that much. I wish they turned down the magentas a little bit, not made them so strong, because we can actually see them in the fingers, and we can kind of see it in the lips and the eyes. I think the pose in this is super great, as well as this one. I actually like this pose right here, and especially the cropping right here, because it isn't causing like having to make the S curve. It is kind of like leading towards more of a center, so you never know where the end is. So it makes it look more V-shaped, making it look a little bit more appealing feminine-wise. But again, that color is still throwing me off a little. It isn't so bad in these photos, but in other photos, it is pretty bad. And moving on to this photo, I wish there was another photo of this. This one is kind of like it, but I think it's just wearing the same outfit. I wish there was a side angle of this one because this one seems kind of secretive with the leaves right here. So in that aspect, I imagine that they don't want pictures taken, but I would have liked one from the side showing her face ordering this. The English kind of says, okay, you're not in Japan, but it doesn't really give off the impression of Hawaii other than the wood and the plants. Maybe having it to the side, getting a little bit of the scenery would have helped give that Hawaii vibe. Unless it looked like this, of course, then in that case, then having the leaf right here would have been better. Or you know what, just carry the leaf around and take a picture everywhere. Then we move on to a collage comparatively to the front and back inside cover. But except every single one of these are different if you go left to right, but up and down they're the same. Doesn't really bother me that much. We see a better example of this later on. Now I'm talking about these photos right here. This one seems unintentional. This one seems kind of in the moment, but the face she's putting on isn't the most attractive face. It kind of looks like, oh, okay, we're taking some pictures. All right, hey, let me just change the lens real quick. And then she's over there checking her nails. This is the kind of vibe I get. This is kind of like off shots, but it's not like intentional in that way. It's more like, oh, hey, let me just take a quick, you know, picture to make sure my exposure is okay kind of picture. Opposed to that, we have this one, which actually could fit into a magazine. And although the hand is blown out thanks to the sun, the hair doesn't bother me because it kind of acts like a hair light. But the pose in this is very Matsumura-like, and it's very like subtle and very inwards, and it's not the most feminine as in S curves, but it still is feminine in a weird sort of docile way, kind of like Matsumura Sayuri is, always saying she's cute. I feel like this really expresses that, so it fits along really well with the personality as well as being a nice photo to look at. Then we have this photo right here. Again, it's blue. I don't know why, that's the first thing that I notice, and the shadows are a little bit green. I don't know what's really going on with this. Maybe the shutters are blue and it's making everything inside the room be a little bit more blue than it should be. Maybe that's what it is. In that case, I would have lifted them up and lived with the actual big surrounding lights. I mean, you won't get that much directionality out of it and everything would be like flat. But the blue is kind of distracting. But moving on to the posing, which is the second thing you notice, or well, I notice. And I think this pose really helps out with her assets, like no joke included. But I think like whatever she accentuates in this photo actually helps it with this pose, and especially with it being a little bit of a wider angle, it actually shows whatever's closer to the camera a little bit bigger than what's farther away. And plus having the foot over here and having the arm like this, kind of helping adding a little bit of curve in it. I'm not too sure how I feel about the sharp shoulder though. In this photo right here, I really don't like the face that she's putting on. It kind of looks like she's mad, especially with her hand being like, huh, what? So it isn't my favorite photo, and it's a little bit too contrasty for my taste for it being this kind of scenario. And next we get to see exactly how much contrast is actually put into these photos. This is the usual contrast that's been going on in the photos. This is how it probably looks closer to in camera. As you can see, there's a lot more highlights to see, but you don't get to see some of the details in the highlights, but you get to see more details in the actual shadows because it isn't so dark like this one. As you can see, this one's a little bit more punchy than this one. This one's a little bit more soft and open, which I actually think I prefer for Matsumura Sayuri. I prefer this type of look more than this punchy look that's over here, which is in most of the photo book. But you can't argue with that because that is the photographer's style, and you wouldn't have gotten that photographer if you didn't know the style already. And move on to the alternate of the front cover. And as we can see, I do like this one a little bit more, even though the hands are in a weirder position. I do like what she's doing with her eyes way more than the other one. The other one looks like she's about to stab someone. And in this one, it looks a little bit nicer. It doesn't look as nice as like something else that could happen. But this one actually looks a little bit more innocent. And especially with the whole tongue and finger thing, it looks a little bit better than the front cover. This little sequence is interesting right here because I don't really know what's going on. Judging from these pictures, they're all smiling and all walking around. But then moving on over here, we have her crouching down and then hugging her stomach. I don't know if it's soft or if she's trying to force herself into the water or if she has a stomach ache. To be honest, it looks like she has a stomach ache, especially holding her stomach and going down like that, kind of like, oh no, my stomach, and then just like crouching down into like a fetal position. And also it's kind of weird that these two are the same exposure, but this one's completely different. Next we'll go to this photos right here. And these are a little bit weird because this is like the actual frame from the photo. As you can see, it is super long comparatively. Like it's not 16 by 9 and it's not like, what is it, 8 by 10. It's none of that. It's actually like 8 by 12 more like it. And as you can see right here, this is how it would look. So that's why I'm thinking, oh man, if only it was in landscape. But unfortunately it wasn't. And we're stuck with this, with it being like this. I think this one could have been pulled off in 2 pages. This one couldn't have been pulled off. Maybe having this one on the side, making her look like she's falling down backwards would have been interesting to do. Having a little bit of things mixed up. We've seen things mixed up in this photo book already, so it wouldn't hurt to try something else. But I do like this photo. It is very soft, and it isn't as punchy as the other ones. It still has some contrast in it, but it isn't as bad as the other ones. Then we go to this one right here. The blue doesn't really help in this one, because when you think outside in Hawaii, you don't think blue, you think warm sun. So having it blue like this is an interesting choice. I'm not sure if it was the best choice. I feel like a warmer light would have helped more in this case. And if you're shooting raw, then that wouldn't have been an issue. So I'm not too sure why the blue decision was taken. I mean, having 2 warm ones next to each other isn't bad. Having a cool and a warm is obviously looking better, but having this being the outside, it being cool, doesn't really help. And over here, it's kind of magenta I'm noticing, which is kind of weird. But back on topic, warm over here should have been better. and two warm images next to each other wouldn't have looked that bad. I move on to another image, which I think is interesting and we haven't seen done before a lot because we usually see like 1 second apart. These are 1 second apart, but there's a lot of them, so it's really interesting to see. And something else that I noticed is they have a pink outline instead of a white outline, which is an interesting choice. Keeping it all the same color theme is actually really nice to see. So this is an interesting choice. I don't know if it was the editor, Matsumura, or photographer, but I think this is a nice choice in it. Then move on to this one right here, which is a little bit more yearbookish because there's no real organization to it. Like, having this image up here isn't the best image. I mean, you're having the included mirror, but I feel like they're way too separated for it to be like comprehensible what's going on either end. And having these two cutouts next to each other with this big cutout over here does make it seem a little bit weird. This one right here I feel like would have been good if it was bigger. Maybe thinking about this again and starting over from scratch would have helped out. And this one right here is way too blurry, don't include that one. And then move on to this one, which might be my favorite image of the entire photo book because it helps concentrate solely on her. It is her face with what might be like the strap actually down, so it looks like it's like bare shouldered. But I do like the pose that this one is in. Again, the hand being the soft side or the not as thick side of the hand, and solely focusing on the face. It isn't like a really expressive face, but it's very calm. And I think this photo just speaks calm and speaks very relaxed and very soft. It's not her goofing off, it's not her being too serious, or it's not her being too modelly. It is her just being like very calm and being herself. And I do like that there is like a kick light over here coming in from the lights. Even though it's a little bit blue, I still like it. Next is this one, which I actually like. I like the lighting placement. My light is right here, although their light would have been over here. This is almost, I think this is 180 degrees left of Sayuri, camera right of us. And having it maybe angled a little bit more to the front would have helped with the catch light and would have made it a little bit more Rembrandt light. Having it like just a little bit scooted to the front would have helped with this. This one is interesting because she's under the covers, but yet we're getting a light coming in from this side. The light is weird. I don't know if this is like dodging and burning, but it does seem a little bit off. I mean, obviously we're getting the shadows over here, so it looks like a hard light, but looking at the reflection of her eye, it's coming from like right over here, and it doesn't really match with what's going on in the shadows over here. And this shadow being super strong and her being under the covers. Under the covers, for me, when my mind thinks under the covers, I think very, very, very soft light, because especially with whatever is on top, the sheet, the white sheet, it should be very soft if the light is coming through that. It's like all of hers should be almost equal. It would be a little bit dark. As we see over here, it's a little bit dark, but as we see, it's all very soft lights. But over here, it's really hard lights, and it kind of looks like it was dodged and burned a little bit. I don't think it's that strong of an image. Like, I'd rather see soft light under there than seeing this hard light under the sheets. It completely throws my mind off of whatever vibe was going off here. And this right here, it's a little bit softer, so it doesn't bother me that much. But you can see the light was pretty close with it being super bright over here and super dark over here. Then we have an image that shouldn't have been included. I like the expression, but the blurriness is way too much. Now we have a fun image. This one seems definitely like a yearbook. Look at all this. Right here screams yearbook. But right here we have a cute little Sayuri right there, peeking off being one of the pumpkins. I think this would have worked out better if it was Akimoto Manatsu, but that's just me. Then we have on-camera flash lighting of her in a supermarket. These two are almost the same. This one's a little bit fashion way. This one's a little bit fun. So maybe having 3 of these or 2 of these would have been better than having all 5 of these. And plus the wardrobe is really weird with this yellow lighting. Again, this supermarket lighting isn't the best. I feel like if you're here, the on-camera flash isn't gonna work well with it, because on-camera flash, unless you have a gel on it, is gonna be way wider than the yellow lighting in the actual building. So, solution to this, have a yellow gel in front and match the lighting of the actual supermarket. Then you could adjust your white balance in order for it to be the same. Or hey, if you want to keep with the blue theme, have like extra yellow on the flash, that way everything else is blue. Next, we'll move on to these photos, and these photos really seem like it's a yearbook because of these 2 cutouts right here. Like, they're not in sync with each other. Like this is some of the bed, but then this is none of the bed. And over here we have like a little synchronization thing happening that I don't really like. These are more fun, playful. I feel like they had fun with the shoots, but I feel like the lighting isn't that strong with it. It kind of feels like, well, let me just put a light over here and then flash it over there. Because as we can see, it's a little bit hard. The placement of the light is thought about, but I think it's a little bit too hard for this scenario. Maybe having like an umbrella on there would have helped. And also the makeup is way too strong for the shoots. I like what she's wearing, but the makeup is like way too pink around and there's glitter on it, and I feel like it's way too strong for this photo. So as you can see right here, the makeup is actually more apparent, and the hairstyle, I feel like they try to combine it with it, but I feel like they're two completely different things, and in this scenario it doesn't really match that well. This is more like a out on the town kind of makeup style or party style. It isn't so much like, oh hey, let's just, you know, relax and play some cards kind of makeup. Next we move on to super blurry image. Don't include this one, even though you see the house, I still feel like it's not worth it. This one is actually more in focus, and this one would have been better to put. Now this one right here, as you can see, there's actually lights coming into the lens that's coming from the blinds, and you can actually see the lens flare right here with the blinds in it, which actually is distracting, and it sucks to get in the image. And I feel like this was a strong image. If only this wasn't there, it would have been super strong. And right here I want to talk about the pigtails that she has in this. I feel like it doesn't really go well with this outfit. I see what's going on, but I feel like the pigtails are a little bit too cutesy for this. But I do think it works out better in this image right here because it isn't actually as apparent. It's a little bit more subtle that she's wearing it. It's not putting it out there completely. And plus we don't get a lot of distracting elements with the undergarments and the blankets. Right here it's a little bit more about her and her looking at the camera, kind of posing, her using that curves to her advantage, and the light coming in from the background is a little bit better than it coming from like the side background. And we have her with her hair down in this one, and I actually like this mood better. Although the hand is like right in front, so like a little bit in front of the camera, making it look bigger and showing like the full front of it, making it look a little bit wider. I do like this one right here because it is more calm, as I've said before. I kind of like her in her calm situations, I've noticed. I feel like it fits her a little bit better. Of course she is a little bit crazy, but there are those images to supplement that. So I feel like having the contrast of like her calm and then her crazy is a nice little combination. And in this one right here, I could get what she's going for, but I feel like she looks tired in this image. I feel like she's like, okay, it's like super early in the morning, or it's like I've been like jet lagged and I just want to go to sleep. This one right here, we also see a little bit of jet lagged. And this one right here, this is more about the face and it's to the side and it's like the full image, but I don't think it's that well executed. I don't know if the eyes, something's going on with the eyes. I don't know if that's post-production, that I feel like the eyes aren't popping as much as they should be. Maybe the background is a little bit too bright and maybe it needs some fill on the front. Maybe that's what it needs, because all we have is fill, it looks like, is this bottom stuff right here and something else, probably like another window coming from the other side. So maybe having the window open could have helped. These images I actually really like. Right here, you could crop this out or get away from that. I feel like it would have been stronger without it. This is a little bit distracting, but overall these images are actually really strong. This one says a lot, looking straight at the camera, having the highlight right here. As you can see, having it a little bit warmer looks a little bit better because it is Hawaii and you want it to be a little bit warmer, contrasting with the blue over here. Now it makes sense to have the blue because it contrasts with the warmness. And right here, I like this one because it's like a totally blown out over here, which is actually because of the vignetting on the sides, which you can actually see vignetting over here. If you look, it's like a little bit darker because right here the light hits, but then it's a little bit darker. As you can see in my hand, it's a little bit darker over here. But in this example, I think lightening up on the darkness, maybe increasing the shadows would have helped on these images. But I have to say these images alone are fairly strong, so I feel like with or without a little bit less contrast, I feel like it's still good. And I feel like these say a little bit more Hawaii than some of the other ones we've seen. So then we finally get to the last 2 pages of the photo book. And as we can see, this is a little bit more sitting down, relaxing, and taking it all in. Right here, she's writing Mats for Matsumura Sayuri. And over here, it's her looking at the camera, hair in her face, looking away, and looking back. That's a nice little thing right there. I like this little story playing out right here. And it's actually following the flow of the photo book, how you open it. So you open it, you look at this, and you see her looking at you, the hair gets in the face, so then she looks away, and then bam, she looks back, smiling for a last image. This is a nice sequence. It isn't so much like flip the page, see the next sequence. but it does tell a story in a nice little arcing motion, which I like. So yes, this sequence is actually strong for the ending, and I do like it. It's kind of like a reminiscing, looking away, like what's next, and then over here, it doesn't matter because I'm with you. Bam! That's the kind of impression I get from this. Very, very much Matsumura Sayuri. And then we get a secret talk. Ooh, can't show you that. That's a secret talk. And then finally, we get all the people that were in this. And that's been Matsumura Sayuri's photo book. Not the strongest photo book. Not the worst photo book. I think it's stronger than Hori Miona's photo book. I don't think it's stronger than Wakatsuki Yumi's. So I feel like Matsumura Sayuri really got some input in this. If she didn't, I'd really be surprised that the editors did such a great job capturing her aura. But I feel like some of those things actually brought it down a bit from the usual photo book. It did make us feel a little bit more gimmicky, a little bit more cheap, is that the right word? A little bit more like, as I said before many times, it makes it feel like a yearbook that you would get at high school. I'm wondering if it stuck to professionalism, maybe a little bit less contrast, a little bit less messing with the colors, how it would have turned out. But again, this is Matsumura Sayuri, so it does fit her theme a little bit more. So, which leads me to the recommendation. If you like Matsumura Sayuri, definitely pick this up. A lot of photos I didn't show that as a fan you would really enjoy, and I recommend picking it up rather than looking at it online, because looking at it in person and flipping through the pages, filling the pages, way better of an experience, and you actually get to, like, you know, open it up and look through it. So who else would I recommend this to? I'd recommend this to people who are curious about the photo book. If you're curious and want to see more of it, then I recommend picking it up. If you're a general Nogizaka fan, I wouldn't say this is the best photo book for you to pick up, but if you want to support Matsumura Sayuri and the actual whole endeavor of the photo book stuff, then I recommend picking it up for sure. Again, it's very Matsumura Sayuri, so you have to know her style in order to get the photo book, because there are some things that are, again, a little bit yearbookish rather than photo bookish, which really hurts it. But the photos themselves are actually good, and the actual theme of it is actually strong, other than there's really no real Hawaii theme. I feel like it could have been stronger in that area too. Again, look at Shinichi Mai's example. Perfect example of what it should be like at a different location. So that has been the photo book critique of Matsumura Sayuri's first photo book. If you enjoyed the video, you can leave a like. If you have any recommendations or anything at all, please leave it down in the comments below. If you have a favorite photo book and you want me to critique it, you can go ahead and look at the tiers on Patreon in order to get that. This month there is a photo book that will be taken up, so maybe wait for next month to take up the next slot. There's also different tiers there, as well as behind the scenes, where I look through the photo book and you can actually see me looking through it, critiquing it like first time looking. And there's also bloopers on there which you can see, and as well as joining a live stream, which is usually at the end of the month, as well as all the bloopers and behind the scenes. So you can go ahead and do that. Do it before the end of the month so you can see the newest one of that month. Again, that's taking time to edit and put together. It's not like donating me money, because you actually do get stuff out of it. So again, leave those comments down below what you thought about the photo book, whether you'll pick it up, whether you're waiting for it, and generally what you thought about it. If you have any recommendations, again, please leave those down below. And if you want to, you know, put the money in and actually get your own, then you can do that on Patreon. And you can subscribe to keep up to date with the latest photo book critiques, as well as the weekly news that I do for 48 Group and Sakamichi. And you can also check out on Tuesdays live, you can see the 46th podcast that we have called The Slope Podcast. And you can see that all in the link below, or in the regular channels if you want to see that one specifically. So, as I say every single time, thank you all for watching.